Hello, welcome to another video of Code Snippet. So in this video, we are going to look into AWS IAM, that is Identity and Access Management. So it's very simple service provided by AWS in order to manage access and create users inside AWS. So we are going to quickly go through it in this video. Let's get started without wasting any time. This is going to be a fun video, so sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Alright, so let's quickly jump into the agenda of this particular video. So AWS IAM, Identity and Access Management. So here is what we are going to do in this particular video. First, we will see what exactly is IAM. After that, we will look into what are users, policies, groups and roles. Very easy stuff. After that, we will actually go ahead into AWS and try to create all this. So that is basically a quick agenda of this particular video. So let's get started with what exactly is IAM. So let me go to Canvas over here. So let's try to understand it by using this example. Let's say here we have an IT company, right? We all work in IT industry. So let's take an example of IT company only. So let's say here we have an IT company and let's say there is a new employee who wants to join this particular company. Now when this company actually onboard this employee, what they do? First thing they will do is create a user of this particular employee. First they will create a user so that this guy can log in inside the system of this particular company. He will have some kind of access. And in order to do all this, like creating user, providing access to various resources in the company, for example, your file system, for example, your computers, your labs, your offices, etc. They will need some kind of service, right? They will have something called as a security system. They will develop some kind of security system so that they can manage all these users and manage all the access to this particular company to all the users, not only this guy, but all other employees, right? Same thing will be done by AWS, just that instead of this IT company, consider a AWS environment. So if I go down over here, so if you see over here, now we have AWS instead of IT company. If you have seen the last video, we have created AWS account for myself, right? Now I am the root user of that particular AWS account. I can go ahead and log in, right? So there will be a root user by default who will be able to access this particular AWS account. This guy will be able to access, right? So this is basically the root user now. Now this user is already there. But now I want to create some other users as well. Let's say I want to give you access to my AWS account so that you can log in and do your job. Or there is a root user in the company and I'm joining as a developer in that company. Now this root user need to give me access to AWS account so that I can go ahead and do my job. In order to do that, something called as IAM, Identity and Access Management, comes into picture. What you can do now, you can just go ahead and create another user. This is basically, let's say, user 1. Now this particular user will be able to access this particular AWS account as we have created the user, right? Now what we can do over here, for this user we can give some kind of password. Here we have some kind of password. So this guy will use his username and his password, put it into AWS login console and he will be able to log in. So that is basically your identity. So you have created a user so that you can log in inside your AWS application. Now a user can be a person, or a user can be an application as well. For example, let's say we have some kind of application, my Spring Boot application. Now from this Spring Boot application, we want to access few services of AWS. For example, let's say we want to put the data in S3 bucket. How we can do that? We need to create the user for this particular AWS account as well. Once we create the user, we will be able to access this particular resources in the AWS again. Now, what is the difference between these two? This user is basically password based user and this user is basically your programmatic user. So it's a programmatic access that we are providing to this particular application because we are going to access resources through our program, right? We are going to access through our program, that is through our code, right? Through our application. So that is when this is called as programmatic access. We will see that and things will be more clear when we actually go into AWS and try to generate user for us. I hope you understand this much. So what we can do, we can just go to AWS and try to create users for us. So what I will do, I will go to AWS. So let's go to AWS. Let's click on sign in. So here what we can do, let me sign in as a root user because I only have a root user at the moment, right? And if you see over here, you have another option as IAM user, right? Here you need to enter your account ID. But now we are yet to create this IAM user. When you create an IAM user, you can log in by using this approach. But now I have this particular root user. So what I will do, I will select my user. This is my email ID. I will quickly put my password over here. There we go. We should be able to log in by now. So that's it. So we are in AWS console. So if you see over here, here is my root user, right? Now, in order to go to IAM, what you can do, go ahead over here and just search for IAM. So just click on this. Now this is basically your IAM console. Now this guy is asking me to add MFA, that is multi-factor authentication, which I did not add it yet. So it is crying basically. But if you have added it, you may not see this particular part of it. And you will see something like this, IAM resources. In that you will see user groups, users, roles, policies, identity providers, right? All of these things you will be able to see. The numbers may be different depending on the user groups or users you have. Now what we are looking into, we are looking into users, right? So let's go to users now and let's try to create a new user. So if you see over here, we don't have any user. What I will do, I'll just click on create user. Now here you will be asked a username. I will just give username as Chetan for now. And here if you see, here you have an option which says provide user access to AWS management console. That means he should be able to log in on a console, right? As we have logged into this console from root users, so Chetan should be able to again access the AWS console. And if you see over here, are you providing console access to a person? So it says specify a user in identity center. So identity center is another service of AWS which is for user management. But here, if you have a IT industry and you want to manage hell lot of users, then this is recommended to use identity center, because it is very easy to manage all your users in identity center, right? But we only want to create one. So I will go with create an IAM user. So we are going to create an IAM user who will be able to log into AWS account, as well as he will be able to have a programmatic access through access keys, right? So we can generate access key, put it in our Spring Boot application and connect to various services of AWS, for example S3, right? So if you go below, you will have something called as password. So you can either select auto-generated password or you can have a custom password over here. So what I will do, I will just select a custom password over here. So we have this password selected, minimum 8 characters, and include the mix of all this, right? And if you want the user to create a new password when he logs in, then you can check this, right? So I will just uncheck it for now because we will use this one only. Now let's go to next. Now this guy is asking me to save it. Don't save it yet. Now, if you see over here in the permission section, you have three things over here. First, add a user to a group, right? So what exactly is group? We are yet to see that. We will see in a moment. After that, copy permissions. If you have any other user, you can copy the permissions of that guy to this guy, right? And after that, we have attach policies. What exactly is policy? That is also we are going to look into. So we have all these policies, but I'm not selecting anything right now. So what I will do, I'll just go to next and I will just create a user. Now, if you see over here, the user is created for us. It is giving me a link so that user can sign in. So what I will do, I'll go to incognito window and paste that particular link. Now, if you see over here, we have just that account ID is populated over here, right? Nothing else. You can directly go to AWS and put this particular account ID over there. This is user specific. Now let's go back to this one. I will put the username and password over here. Password, I will just put the one that I have entered over there. Now once I click sign in, should be able to take us to AWS console. Now if you see over here, it is giving me all the tour of AWS. And if you see over here, now the logged in user is Chetan and the account ID. So this is a different user who is accessing my AWS account now. Now what I will do, I will just try to connect to EC2 from here, right? And I will just go to dashboard. If you see over here, we have API error, API error, API error everywhere. Everything is red, right? Why it is red? Because we have not given access to this guy yet. Because Chetan do not have permissions to access EC2. So that's why everything is API error, right? We are not getting any data over here. Now let me go back over here. Now it says user created successfully. You can view the user from here. And if you see over here, user is created. Last activity 1 minute ago. Console sign in, we just sign in, so that's why it's showing us the date, right? Everything is there, right? No problem. Now if we go back over here, we have created this user by using password and he is able to log in over here, but he is not able to access the resources. Why it is not able to access the resources? Because we have not given any permission to it. So when we say permission, you can give permission by using policies. So each permission will have a policy document. So if I go back over here and go to Chetan again, and here if you see we have something called as add permissions. If I click on add permissions and again go to this particular thing, attach policies directly. So I will give policies over here and I will just now say EC2. Now if you see there are multiple EC2 policies over here. Now I will go and give the full access to EC2. So EC2 full access, and apart from that let's give access to S3 as well. So S3 full access as well. So we have given EC2 and S3 policy to this particular guy. Now when we attach a policy to a user, that particular user will have access to perform this particular task. And if you go inside it, you will see that how the policy actually looks. So if you see over here S3 we have full access, right? So as we have given S3 full access, that user will be able to perform all this. For example, get data, get object, list object, create job, create bucket. All these things can be done by that particular user, right? And you can also see it in JSON format, and you can also see that in JSON format, right? So this is how AWS policy looks. So this particular policy is now attached to our user, right? We are yet to save it. I will just say next, and these two permissions we are giving, these two policies we are adding, and we'll just say add permissions. Now if you see over here, this user have these two permissions. Now let's go back to our user and let's try to refresh. Now do you see any error? Now if you see over here, all the API errors are gone over here. That means this guy is able to access EC2. Let's try to go over here and try to go inside S3. So you will be able to see that this guy will be able to create a bucket now. For example, let me create a bucket as code snippet v1, let's say, and I will keep everything same and create a bucket. So now this guy is able to create a bucket. So this guy have created a bucket, and as a root user, if I go to S3 now, then you should be able to see the same bucket that guy have created. And as this guy have full access, he will be able to delete the bucket as well. So in order to delete, you need to paste this particular name over here and say delete bucket. And there we go, we have deleted the bucket as well. That means this user have access for EC2 and have access to S3 as well. So we have successfully created a user. The user part we have seen, and policies also we have seen. Now something called as groups comes into picture. Now let's go over here and let's say we have many users now to this particular AWS account, right? So I have this particular users who is a group of developers, and this particular user who is a group of testers, right? Now, since I have created this user and gave him EC2 and S3 access, what I will have to do, I will have to give the access to all the users. Let's say I will have some other user over here. If I go to users, let's say Chetan is the one. Let's say there is another user called as developer 1, developer 2, developer 3. So I will need to go to each one and provide the permission to EC2, permission to S3, right? One by one. Go to this user, do permission, go to this user. But ultimately all the developers will have same permissions. I will just need to go inside each user and give the same permission again and again, which is overhead. So what I can do, I can create a group, right? And give the permission to this particular group itself. Like permission to, let's say, access to EC2 and S3. That means this particular group can access EC2 and S3. And what I will do, I will just pick all this and put it into this particular group. Ultimately, all the developers are going to have access to EC2. And same with QAs. Let's say QA needs only access to S3, not EC2. Then I can just create a group, give access to only S3, and they all will be happy. That is basically the concept of group. Now, how can you create that? Just go to user groups and create a group. I will say the name as developer, right? So it's a developer group. And Chetan, I want to add to this particular group, and this group will have access to EC2 full access. Let's say, where is full access? This is a full access and S3 full access. This group will have EC2 and S3 full access. Let's give one more probably. I will give Lambda. So Lambda, AWS Lambda full access, right? If you see over here, AWS Lambda full access, and I will just create a group. So it will be creating a group for me, and it will have one user. So if I go inside it, it will have one user, which is Chetan. So if you go to users now, you will see that there is a user Chetan. And now if you see the policies, then this user have EC2, S3 plus Lambda. Now last time did we give Lambda access? No, but this got added because we have added this guy to a group called as developer. Now next time when I'm going to create a user, let's say Pushpa, right? Pushpa I am creating, and here I will just say I want to create IAM. I will just give password. I have given a password over here. I will just say next. And here if you see, we will have add user to a group, right? What I will simply say, just add it to a developer, and I will say next, and I will just create it. And ultimately this guy will have that particular permissions. So when I'm working with groups, I don't have to think much about giving this particular permissions. So I will go back over here and just delete this particular user now because we don't need it anymore. I'll just say confirm and delete the user. So that is about the group. So we have created a group over here. Now let's go back over here. So we have seen the concept of group, very easy. Users, policies and groups we have seen. Now at the end we have roles, right? Now what exactly is IAM role? Now IAM role is a set of permissions that anyone or anything can assume temporarily to do a specific task. So this is basically a temporary permission to a user in order to do some task in AWS, right? For example, let's say I am a user, right? I am a user and I want to see a billing, right? What exactly is the billing of this particular AWS account? But I don't have permission. I don't have this particular policy. So if you go over here, I don't have the policy to look billing, right? So if I go to my user, which I have logged in, and if I go to billing and cost management, you will see that I don't have permissions, right? But I anyway want to see it, right? Then what we can do one way is we can assume a role. That means this particular user, Chetan, can assume a role of billing and go and watch that particular billing temporarily. The role is something which can give temporary access to a resource to some user or any other application, right? So now let's go to Canvas. So let's say this user is there, and now that user wants to access billing, but that users do not have access to perform any billing. Then what we will do, we can create a role. So this is symbol of role, and this role will have some kind of permission. Permission means it will have a policy attached to it, which will be for watching a billing, right? So billing policy, let's say, is attached to this particular role. And now this user or any other user can assume this role and watch the billing of your application, right? So that is basically the simple use case. Now what we will do, let's create a role. So first we will go ahead and create a role. So here what I will do, I will go to roles and create a role for us. Now here, if you see over here, we have trusted entity type. That means who is allowed to assume this particular role inside your AWS account. So here I will select AWS account because users in this account will be able to assume a role, right? And here if you see, I will select this particular account. So this is basically our account that I'm using. And what I will do, I will just go on to next. And here, since we need to give billing related permissions, I will go ahead and select AWS billing read only and billing access. And I will just say next. So if you see over here, this is the user. And if I go to billing and cost management, then you will have something called as cost summary, which will not be visible. And if you see over here, the view bill, you will not be having a permission. So the permission that we have added in last step, if I go back over here to add permissions, and we have added billing related permissions, right? So by using these two permissions, you will be able to access this bills related section. But this cost summary will still not be accessible. So what you need to do, you need to add that particular permission as well. For example, AWS cost usage report, right? So if I add this one as well, then you should be ideally able to access that. Now I will just give the name to this particular role. So I will just say billing role, and I will just create it. Should have been created. So billing role is basically created over here. Now we have this particular role created, and we have attached 3 policies to this particular role. Now what we need to do, we need to assign this particular role to this particular user, right? So let's go back over here and let's go to users now. So we have this particular user. What we can do over here, in order to assign a role, we can go to create inline policy, and here JSON value should work for us. So here we need to give 2 things. First, we need to give the action, which is basically assume role for us. So what I will do, I will just go ahead and copy this value. It should be sts colon assume role. So there we go. And here we need a resource. We need a ARN of that particular role. Let me go back to role and go to billing role, and there should be this ARN. So what I will do, I will just go ahead and add this particular role over here, and that's it. Now I'll just say next, and here it will ask for a policy name. That so I will just give some name as billing role policy, right? And I will just create it. So if you see over here, this particular policy is attached to our user now. Now we have everything in place. We have created a role, we have attached a permission, and we have assigned this particular role to this particular user. Now if you go over here and refresh this page, you will not be able to access this yet. Because if you see over here, we have this particular user itself. We need to assume a role. We need to assume a role in order to see billing information. Now how we can assume the role? So if you go inside a role, we will have a link to switch to role in console. If I click on this and replace this link over here, click enter, then it says switch role, switch to this particular billing role. Now if I click on switch role, then you will see that we will be switched to that particular role. So if you look over here now in the billing role, you will see that we have switched to this particular billing role, and we have switched from this particular user because we have logged in from this particular user. And if I go to billing and cost management now, then we should not get any error. If you see over here, we are not getting any error over here. And if I click on view bills, then you will be able to see all the bills. You will see 0 because this is a free tier account and it's not charging us anything. But now this particular Chetan user is able to assume billing role and is able to see this particular bills. And how we can go back to Chetan user, right? We can just click on switch back and it will take us to this particular user back, and again you will be able to see that there is no permission because we are not using that particular role now. So that is how you can create and attach a role to that particular user, right? Now we have seen roles as well. So we have seen pretty much everything. So if you go back over here, we have seen what is IAM, we have seen what is users, policies, groups, roles, right? Everything we have seen, and we have done hands-on as well. Now, if you go back over here and if you go to this particular user, then you will see something called as access key, right? There is option to create access key. There is option to use command line interface, local code, application running on AWS, third-party service, application running outside AWS. A lot of options are there. And this particular access code you can use for programmatic connection. So we have seen password based user, right? But how you can do by using a Spring Boot application? You can do by using this particular access key that we have been seeing, right? So how we can use this particular access key and connect to your AWS by using your Spring Boot application? Let's say add a file to your S3 bucket. So that is something we are going to look into next video. So we are going to go through S3, what exactly is S3, and we are going to create a role for that particular S3, and we are going to create a Spring Boot application which will add a file to that particular S3 bucket. That is basically the plan of next video. So I hope you have clear understanding of what is AWS IAM. If you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to Code Snippet. Share this video with your friends so that they also have idea about IAM. That's it for this video. See you in the next video.